First up today, Ryan, listening in Manassas, Virginia on the web. Hi, Ryan.
Hello, sir. Thank you so much. Your gift for doctrinal discernment has been a real blessing and advancing our maturity as a Christian family. Just trying to figure out, is your belief that speaking in tongues is an acquired talent as far as speaking in the known human languages? Is it speaking in angelic tongues during prayer? What do you think of the concept of being slain in the Spirit? I've never spoken in tongues, and I know it's not essential to salvation, but we attend a church that very, very much has it in their statement of faith as a gift, and that is a special prayer language. And it's no matter how hard we pray for it, we haven't gotten it. Well, it's getting off track. What is it you believe tongues is?
Sure. Well, let me answer quickly the slain in the Spirit. I've written about that in Counterfeit Revival, and there's no evidence whatsoever that this is a practice that Jesus or the disciples participated in. Slain in the Spirit is found in the world of the occult, but certainly not within the context of a biblical worldview. The only place that remotely even hints at people being slain in the Spirit is in the Garden of Gethsemane, where the soldiers fall backward when they get some glimpse of the effulgence of God's glory. But if that is slain in the Spirit, I don't think anybody would want it, because it's very clearly in that context judgment. So slain in the Spirit is a decidedly unbiblical practice, and it should not be participated in. We want to be alert and sober-minded rather than being those who participate in these kinds of practices. As far as tongues is concerned, it seems to me that if tongues were non-cognitive, non-linguistic utterances, they would be untranslatable. I don't think that there's any evidence that we would be imbued with the language of angels either, as though we could even know that there is such a thing as a language of angels. I think the best interpretation of 1 Corinthians chapter 13, when it talks about the tongues of men and angels, is hyperbolic. The point being that if you could speak in every known language, if you could even speak in the language of angels, again, hyperbole is being used here, it would be reduced to nothing if it were devoid of love. So my sense is that what we have is a very clear prescription in the Bible to seek the greatest gift, and that would be to seek the gift of prophecy delineated in 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Paul makes a big thing out of that, and why does he do so? It is because tongues may edify a person, but it doesn't edify the congregation. And what we must seek to do is to use our gifts for the edification of the body, so that the body might be strengthened, so that the body might mature, might be equipped and exhorted, and come to a full knowledge of God.
Okay. Have you ever witnessed speaking in tongues in a congregation?
Oh, many times. I mean, in fact, I have been in meetings where the gift was being induced. So you'd have a person who was priming the pump standing in front of a group of congregants who had been saved, and now he's saying, you received the first blessing, but there's a second blessing. And that second blessing is speaking in tongues. Certainly the evidence is speaking in tongues, and so he would stand before the group of people and say, okay, just follow after me. And then he would just start saying words in a non-cognitive, non-linguistic manner and get people to try to copy what he was saying. Well, some people would break out into tongues and some people would not. In some sense, you can understand that if someone is doing this, it is catchy, in the sense that laughter is catchy. It catches on. If people start laughing and you're in that context, it's easy for you to start laughing as well. So what happens is the pump is being primed. Some people don't go for it, and they feel as though they haven't received the second blessing. They feel like they're missing something significant, and they continue striving for it. I think this is ill-conceived from a biblical perspective.
Thank you. That's very helpful. But how would you explain the phenomenon that it happens to other people?
Well, it goes back to the early morning hours of the first day of the 20th century, actually. There was a 27-year-old preacher from Topeka, Kansas named Charles Parham, and he placed his hands on the head of a young student. Her name was Agnes Osman, and suddenly a halo seemed to surround her head, and she began to speak Chinese. And she says for 3 days she was utterly incapable of speaking a single word in English. And even more incredibly, when she tried to write, only Chinese characters would emerge from her pen. So that's the story that is told in terms of the embryonic stages of the Azusa Street revival. And that became the catalyst for other students in Parham's class to seek the gift of tongues. And it wasn't long before many of them, like Agnes, began to speak in languages they had never studied, at least according to Parham, who said that his students spoke, I think, in some 21 languages on that occasion. And then he began proudly proclaiming that while missionaries throughout the church history successfully studied foreign languages, this would no longer be necessary. As a result of the end-time restoration of tongues, all one need would be to receive the baptism with the Holy Spirit, and then they could go to the farthest corners of the world and preach to the natives in languages unknown to the speaker. Well, when the theory was put to the test, it didn't work out very well. One of the stories told by Pentecostal historian Vincent Sinan is a story of a man named Alfred Garr. He was the pastor, as I recall, the L.A. Burning Bush Mission, and he received the gift of tongues. He moved to India, began preaching to the natives in what he believed to be their own languages, but it didn't work. And so he had to come back and decide to be a missionary on different terms. But yeah, all of this began at the beginning of the 20th century with the Azusa Street revival.
Thank you so much, sir.
You got it. I have written about this in a book called Counterfeit Revival. There's also an entry in the Complete Bible Answer Book Collector's Edition available through the ministry.